Hello, everybody, and welcome back to
the Happy Hippie Podcast.
I'm your host, Kylie Iris, and buckle in your seatbelts, folks, okay? Grab your bags of popcorn. This episode is about to be a roller coaster ride. Quick little trigger warning, because I feel like that's probably necessary. This is going to be a really deep podcast. Tears may or may not be shed. Today I'm going to be speaking about this darkest moment of my life. It's kind of crazy because this story that I'm about to share with you guys, some of the closest people in my life don't even know this about me, which is crazy. But and now I'm about to share that with the world. So yeah, this episode really said trauma dumping. It's going to be a heavy one, but it's also going to be a really exciting one. So stick around if you guys have thick skin. If you're wanting like a funny, lighthearted, airy, easy breezy, beautiful podcast, this definitely isn't the episode for you. But for those of you with thick skin that want to hear my story, welcome, everybody. Welcome. Today I'm going to be sharing the story about when I died and came back to life at 14 years old. I can't believe I'm sharing this with the world. I've been sitting with this for over 8 years now. This experience happened over 8 years ago. And to this day, nothing has impacted me more than this experience. So right off the bat, you're probably like, what? Kylie, you died, came back to life? One of the first questions I get is like, what did you see? Who'd you talk to? What's on the other side? Before I even start with the story, I just need to preface by saying this. I have been trying to write a book about this experience since I was about 15 years old. And I would always finish the book. And when it came to reading the final product, I would delete the book. And then I rewrote it. And then I deleted it again. This is the thing. I've had an extremely difficult time trying to articulate myself on just what the fuck happened during this experience. Because if there's one thing I learned throughout this is that there truly is not enough words in the human vocabulary to even describe energy and emotion. There is so much more emotions and energy than there is to this world that human words can even describe. So trying to formulate my experience with words, I've had a very difficult time trying to do this because I simply have not found the words because they don't exist. And instead of holding myself back from sharing the story because I can't explain it exactly how it happened. No, I have a story that's meant to be shared and I need to stop getting in my head about it. So here I am on the podcast about to share with you guys the scariest moment of my entire life. Yeah, so I'm about to get on into it, but I just wanted to preface by saying that. So just understand I'm doing my absolute best to try to describe the situation and just know that I've tried many, many times to try to get this story across, making some kind of sense. To be honest, the universe doesn't really make sense. Yeah, anyways, I think I already did the trigger warning. Yeah, if you're a sensitive person who gets triggered easily, I don't know if this podcast is for you. I don't know. It's a dark one. It really is. But it's also, we'll just get on into it. I feel like I'm procrastinating. I'm procrastinating sharing the story. This is so crazy that I'm actually finally, after all this time, sharing this story. This story hits really close to home. So tears may or may not be shed during this podcast. And if they do, just know that's totally okay. I'm definitely a huge advocate on feeling your emotions. And I think we've been brought up into a society that has conditioned us into believing that emotions are weakness. But I wholeheartedly believe that the opposite is true. Being able to show emotional vulnerability is strength. So if I cry during this podcast, just understand that this is a difficult topic for me. Okay, so before I get on into the story, I feel like I need to give just a little bit of background so you understand everything fully. So growing up, I was a very happy-go-lucky kid, filled with positive energy, okay? If anything, I do think I had maybe a bit of mild OCD growing up, but that was about it. I always had an abundance of energy. If anything, my teachers would always make jokes saying I was on drugs and stuff because of how much energy I had. So again, happy-go-lucky kid, no history of mental health issues. So let's fast forward a little bit. In high school, I was a big party girl. Like, getting drunk was a regular thing in high school. I definitely lived up like the party phase of my life in high school, going out every single weekend and getting drunk and going to parties. That was very normal for me. I was 14 years old, and it was the summer of 9th grade going into 10th grade. It was the end of the summer, so my friend was throwing this huge backyard party, and he invited hundreds of people. So I was so excited. Kylie's a little party girl. Okay, she's like, yay, we're going to have so much fun at this party. So many people are going to be there. I am so excited. Little did Kylie know. Ooh, if only she knew. If only she knew what the fuck was about to go down. Okay, so I pull up to this party. It was a massive party, and it was all outside in my friend's backyard. Also, guys, always trust your gut feeling. Right when I showed up, there was this group of guys in the corner that looked a little bit sketchy. I've never seen them before. So I asked my friend, I was like, hey, like, who are those guys over there in the corner? And he was like, oh, those are some guys that came over to party from downtown Toronto. No one really knows them, but they're going to be here for the night. And I was like, yay, that's so exciting, and new people to party with. Or so she thought. Hours into the night go by, and, I'm having a good time. Having so much fun. Up until one of the sketchy looking guys comes up to me, and he goes, hey, do you want to have a hit of this bong? I'm like, fuck yeah. What do you mean? A little bit of weed? We're at a party. A man's offering me a little bit of weed? Fuck yeah. Okay, bring it over here. Keep in mind, this was during the time that marijuana was illegal. After my years of conversing with different medical professionals, their best bet for what the drug was is salvia. They think it was salvia. But again, to this day, I will never know exactly what was in the drug. But I'm pretty sure it was salvia. So I smoked this bong, okay? So me thinking it's fucking weed, because that's what the guy told me. I'm so excited for this bong rip. I actually invited one of my friends over who was a huge stoner. Okay, he's a super big guy. Big stoner. I was like, yo, this guy's got some good stuff. Come over here. Got my friend over. Okay, so he pulls out the lighter. I take a hit of the bong. Instantly, I just start coughing, okay? And like, you've heard bad coughs before. Okay, you've heard some pretty bad coughs. But when I tell you that this cough was just unheard of, like nothing I've ever experienced before. When I tell you it was 5 to 7 minutes straight of coughing, I truly mean that. So right after the bong rip, cough, 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 cough. I was literally coughing up a fucking lung for minutes straight. And then boom, it hit. Okay, and I look up. And I'll never forget the feeling of when I first stopped coughing and I looked up. The only way I could describe of how it looked like was that it was like you just turned the saturation of life down super, super low. Everything was like blue and gray, and I couldn't hear a single thing. There was hundreds of people at this party, and I couldn't hear anything. I'm 14 years old. Okay, I'm immediately terrified. Why can't I hear anything? Why am I freezing? Why is everything kind of gray? All of these things were going on in my head. I couldn't think straight because there was an extremely bright light that was coming from the neighbor's backyard that was like luring me in. The only way I can describe this light is like it was a vortex of energy coming from the middle of the neighbor's backyard. So instantly I'm kind of like, what the fuck is that light? What's going on? I'm terrified. I start crying and screaming for help, but nobody could hear me. Nobody was there. I could see everyone. I started talking to everyone, but no one could see me. I don't know how to word this. It's really difficult for me to explain this. I had no idea where I was. And I was terrified. I was so scared. It was terrifying. It was a nightmare. It really was. I'd basically go up to people and try to have like full-blown conversations, and it was like people were looking at me like I was a wall. They couldn't see me. They couldn't hear me. They didn't answer me. I couldn't hear them. I think it was like a few minutes where it went by where I was, again, just trying to talk to people, figure out where I was, what was going on. Nothing. It was cold. It was silent. It was gray. In the current moment, I tried so hard to make sense of what was happening, but like I really couldn't. So after a little bit of time passed, that light that was in the middle of the neighbor's backyard was so bright. Again, it wasn't a light. The only way I could describe this energy is that it was a vortex. It was this vortex of light. And it felt like it was drawing me in, like I was a magnet. I felt so pulled towards this light. So I was like, okay, let's go check this out. But it was in the neighbor's backyard. So I started walking towards the light, and then I walked through the fence. And I'll never forget the moment of when I walked through the fence, because obviously you can't walk through a fucking fence. I was so confused. So I was walking towards the light, walking, boom, walked through the neighbor's fence. And that's when I realized something was wrong. And I looked back. And my body was on the ground, just laying there. And this is when I became consciously aware of the fact that, like, I just died because I left my body. At this point, I was kind of floating over myself, watching my body. And then I saw this girl that actually at the time I thought was my friend walking up to me. So I started screaming her name, but obviously she couldn't hear me because I was dead and floating above my body. But I was so excited that someone I knew found me, and then I watch her as she starts laughing at me, and then she kicked me, and then she poured an entire bottle of water on me and started giggling, and then called everybody around to come and look. A little bit of time passes, and there's a bunch of people gathered around me, around my body. Not a single person knew that I just died. They just thought I was, like, drunk and passed out. Like, nobody knew, right? So they're all just laughing, like, taking photos. I was, like, the laughingstock of the school from this event, right? I was what appeared to be that, like, drunk blonde bitch. At this point, I was floating over my body, and when she poured the water on me, I could, in the slightest way, I could feel it. So then I was like, oh my God, like I can still come back, you know, because I did realize that I wasn't in, I don't know if it was Earth, I'd call it the in-between stage. I wasn't dead. I was in this, like, gray in-between stage of death, and it's like, it's very hard to describe. Essentially, the light was calling me so strong. Again, the analogy of a magnet is the best thing I can use to describe it. I felt like I was being pulled towards the neighbor's backyard. So I was like, okay, let's check out this light. Again, I walk towards the light. I walk through the neighbor's fence. And then I was taken to the next stage. The only way I can describe this next. So then I was taken to life review. And basically what this is it's kind of like a movie of your whole life playing in front of your eyes. Every single moment of my entire life since being born was played in front of me. And it wasn't just like it was a movie being, like, watched. You could feel every single emotion you have ever felt in your entire life, like, all at once. I think it's kind of like your last time feeling as a human, so you get to, like, go through all the experiences that you went through your whole life, kind of all at once. It was scary, obviously, in the moment. I was so young, and it was traumatizing, but, you know, dying, it wasn't scary. It weirdly felt peaceful, but I was still consciously Kylie Iris as a fucking human being in this body, you know, so I was fighting, and I started watching the videos of me as a baby started playing, and then just like a time-lapse movie of my entire life fast forwarding before my eyes, and I started screaming. I grew up Christian, so at the time I believed in God, and I started screaming for God. It was getting towards the end of my movie, and I started screaming, and I said, God, I'm not ready to go. I said, God, please, I can't leave Earth. I didn't finish my mission. I'm not ready. And I started screaming, God, please. I'm too young. And then, boom. About 4 seconds later, I opened my eyes and I was back in my body. Immediately, right when I got back in my body, started bawling my eyes out, like shaking on the ground. I was hysterical. I was completely traumatized from this experience. The first person I saw walked by, I screamed to them to come over, and I said, you need to call the cops, like I just died. And I was, crying and shaking. Again, like, everyone just thought I was a drunk blonde bitch that just passed out. They're like, oh, you're fine, drink some water. Like, nobody had any idea of what the fuck just happened. When I came back into my body, it wasn't that I was like, yay, I'm back. Like, I was just in complete shock. I was 14 years old when this happened. I couldn't even fathom what the fuck just went on, and I was mute. I literally went mute because of how much shock I was in. I got my dad to pick me up, and right when I got in the car, obviously I started breaking down because I couldn't believe what the fuck just happened. Like, I was in complete shock. My dad was like, Kylie, what's wrong? And I couldn't explain what happened. I couldn't explain anything about what happened. I had no idea what the fuck just happened. At that time, I had no idea really what happened. When my dad picked me up, he saw like the mental state I was in, and he immediately was like, somebody drugged you, you're not okay. So he just assumed like I got roofied or something. He was like, it's okay, Kylie, like we're just gonna go back home. You're gonna sleep this off, and tomorrow you're gonna be fine. Mentally, I really wasn't fine. I kept touching my body. Like, I couldn't believe I was still in my body. I had that, like, I'm out of my body feeling, even when I was back in my body. And that's what scared me. Because the energy I felt when I was in the in-between, that kind of gray area, I felt like that, but I was alive. If that makes any sense. I know it's really, really hard to explain and understand. I get it. But again, I'm trying my best to explain the energy here. Dying and coming back to life was terrifying. But I think the scariest moment actually started when I came back in my body. Looking back, yes, like the dying and all that whole experience, it was terrifying. But at the same time, it was kind of peaceful. The energy on the other side is not fear. It's a very high vibrational energy. And I didn't ascend. I was in the journey and process of ascension, and energetically I could feel what the other side felt like. And it's peace. It's love, light. It really is a tranquil, energetic feeling. But obviously I was 14. I was terrified. The real hell started when I came back into my body. So that night I went home. The story's just begun, folks, okay? There's a lot more to this. So that night, I went back home, and I went to bed. I was terrified. I was exhausted. I couldn't even wrap my head around what the fuck just happened. Like, I didn't have words. So I went to bed, and the next morning, when I woke up, I still felt the same. I still felt like I was in this, I call it the in-between, I guess. The in-between to the great beyond. I can't explain it. It's this scary energy that's like you're outside of your body. You're floating, but you're in your body, but everything's kind of melty. It's extremely difficult to describe something like this, but just know it was terrifying. The next morning when I woke up and the feeling didn't go away, that's when I knew, something was wrong. Immediately when I woke up, I texted my friend that also took that bong hit with me. I messaged him and I was like, are you okay? Like, what happened to you? His experience was a little bit more positive than mine. Bro, what the fuck was that? I was in the bush the entire night and I thought I was in Star Wars. So I guess he also had a pretty crazy experience. Obviously, I didn't tell him what happened to me. I actually didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell a single person. I was so traumatized and so shaken up by this experience that it made me mute. I didn't say a single word about what happened. This traumatized me so much to the point where I developed severe PTSD from this experience. I think it was about 3 to 4 days after the event was like my first episode. Basically, what would happen is I would re-experience that in-between stage. This scary night, the terrifying energy and emotion that I experienced during this night, it didn't last a night. This nightmare didn't last a night. When I came back, I had severe PTSD from this experience, and I had really bad triggers. So it started with smoke, which kind of makes sense, right? Because it was related to smoking. So whenever I would see smoke, or like it could be literally just smoke from a fire, smoke from somebody's cigarette, whenever I would see any kind of smoke, it was almost like a switch would flip in my brain, and I would enter back into this like in-between phase. It's that feeling of when I first left my body and I passed over. It was that feeling. And I would feel like that so intensely to the point where I would believe I was dying again. So it was like PTSD mixed with like panic attacks. So I would think I was dying, but then I would start having physical symptoms as if it was like back into that moment. For example, like I couldn't feel, sometimes my whole body would go numb. I wouldn't be able to feel anything in my whole body, which is so scary. And again, like I get it when people have anxiety and stuff and they're like, oh, I'm numb. But like this was next level. I couldn't feel a single thing. I remember it got so bad I actually got my friend to stab me with a knife in my arm once. I started gushing blood everywhere, but I didn't feel a single thing. Imagine you were just walking and then boom, out of nowhere, it feels like you're tripping balls. You're in this in-between stage, like you can't feel anything. It's terrifying. It is the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. I didn't experience this awful thing once. I actually experienced this every single day of my life for 4 years. I was imprisoned by my own mind. I relived this nightmare every single day for 1,460 days of my life. For 4 years I had severe PTSD, and nobody knew. Nobody fucking knew. So my PTSD, it started pretty mild. It started with just kind of feeling uncomfortable, whatever. And at first the triggers kind of made sense. Like it would be smoke, and then it turned into being in closed spaces, rooms, the doors needed to be open. It was a bunch of weird little things, but it started getting really bad, and the triggers started getting fuzzy and stopped really making any sense. I'll never forget one time when an episode came on. I was in the middle of writing a test, and it literally just comes out of nowhere, like a switch just flips, and boom, my episode would be triggered out of nowhere. So I remember once I was in the middle of math class writing a test, and I could feel it start to come on. I was like, oh no. I knew it was coming on. For it to have an episode in school, it's just terrifying, right? So instantly I ran to the hallway. It's funny looking back, because I was always the happy-go-lucky person in high school. Like, I was the funny friend, I was a little bit of, for some classes, I was a little bit of a class clown. But, like, I was always that person who put a smile on everybody's face. I was that strong friend. Whenever anybody needed something, they would come to me. But I lived in hell for 4 years, and nobody knew. Not a single person knew what I was going through. I didn't share it with anybody. I'll never forget that episode, that when I was writing the test in class. So, I was writing the test, and I felt it starting to come on. Instantly just run to the hallway, because I can't be in front of people when my episodes happen. So I went to the hallway, and I fell to the ground because I forgot how to walk. One of my episodes got so bad that I actually forgot how to walk. So I fell to the ground, and what I would do is I would crawl to the bathroom in one of the stalls, and I would have a mental breakdown. I'd cry, I'd scream, I'd do whatever I needed to do, And then I'd go to the mirror afterwards. I would fix up my makeup, and I would go back and pretend nothing ever happened. I never told a single person about what I was going through, about what was happening to me. I didn't even know what was happening to me. So how was I supposed to tell people what was happening to me, Because at the time I wasn't like consciously aware that this was PTSD, right? I was just like, why is this still happening? Why, like, what is the fuck is going on? About a month later, my episodes, I got to the point where I obviously would tell my parents. I told them something's not right. I would tell them like what was happening. And every single time, like, their response was, oh my God, like, someone's drugged you. Like, they just thought I was on drugs, like, all the time. Whenever I'd have an episode, like, my parents just thought I was on drugs. Because that's what it was like, right? When I was in an episode, it was like I was tripping so hard. And I would tell them, like, I'm sober. I'm not on anything. Why is this happening? And then, they would always say, oh, someone probably slipped something in your drink at school. And but this happened for months and months and months to the point where it was like, okay, something's fucking wrong here, right? So they took me to the hospital. So we go to the ER, and right away when we spoke to the ER doctor, he pulled my parents aside and was like, yeah, like, it looks like your daughter's on a lot of drugs. Okay, so we're going to run some drug tests to see what she's on. Because that's what it was like. When I had an episode, it was like I was essentially tripping balls. Okay, that's what it felt like. But it was also that energy of like the in-between. And I felt like I was leaving my body. And it was like, it was a whole psychological traumatic event that I replayed in my mind every single day for 4 years straight. But yeah. So anyways, we're at the hospital. We do every single drug test. Every single possible drug test that you could possibly do, right? And every single test came back negative. And that's when I got administered into the mental unit. Mental health at the time, so nobody talked about it. And by the end of my hospital visit, you guys are probably like, what happened? You got some medical assistance, right? You finally got some medical help. How did that go? Oh boy. I could literally write another book, and I probably will. Again, just know that everything I'm talking about in this podcast is extremely just glazing over the story. There's so many details to this story. If I were to tell you guys every single thing about the story, we would be here for 10 hours. So I'm just going to try to speed by it because we still got a lot to go. So after the hospital, I was prescribed stupid amounts of Xanax and benzodiazepines, okay? The doctor was like, this will help you. Right? No. So you got 14-year-old Kylie taking all these drugs, okay? I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, finally, maybe something will work. Maybe something will stop this nightmare. It was about a month later when I stopped being able to even get out of bed. All the drugs did was essentially numb me out so much to the point where I felt like I was a walking zombie. I didn't even feel like I was a human. I felt so empty inside and out, and I think the drugs fucked me up at least 5 times more than I was prior to taking them. Obviously, my mom was like, okay, these drugs aren't helping you. Like, they're clearly making you worse. Like, we need to go talk to someone. So then I booked an appointment with my family doctor. So I go to my family doctor. I tell her what happened, right? And she pulls out my medical file to look what I'm on. When I tell you, my doctor's jaw was to the fucking ground. I mean that. She goes, what? They have you on this? Kylie, they're dosing you up like you're an 80-year-old war veteran. What is going on here? So she was in complete shock with the prescriptions I was taking and the amount of which I was taking. Obviously, oh my God, what? This is clearly bad, right? I'm just going to stop taking them. I'm just going to stop taking the medication. It's clearly not right, And she goes, Kylie, you can't stop taking the medication or you'll die. Oh, what? Nobody told me this shit. What do you mean? Literally Justin Bieber, what do you mean? What the fuck, bitch? Kylie being Kylie didn't listen to the doctor's advice to slowly wean off the drugs for 4 months. I just stopped taking them cold turkey. And the withdrawals from that shit, holy fuck. Holy fuck. I was 14. What 14-year-old should be prescribed that? It's so fucked up. After this experience, I was very hopeless. Over the next 4 years, I went to every single therapy you could possibly think of. Normal therapy, psychotherapy, cranial psychotherapy, EMDR, every single kind of therapy known to fucking man, I've tried. Every single possible medication that was thrown at me to fix me, quote unquote, I tried. I tried everything to make this nightmare stop. It was during this experience in which I decided to take myself on almost like I was my own psychology experiment. During these 4 years, I went to so many different kinds of doctors. Every single doctor that I went to would tell me something different. One doctor told me I had PTSD. The other doctor told me I had anxiety. The other doctor told me I probably have brain cancer and a tumor in my brain that's affecting the way I feel things. Every single doctor I went to would tell me I had something different and prescribe me something different. I think it was about the second or third year when I started to lose hope. It got to the point where I was like, if this is my life, if this is my quality of life, like I don't want to live it. My attacks got so frequent to the point where sometimes they would consume the majority of my day. Nothing could save me. Nothing worked. The therapies, all the different medications, nothing seemed to be able to stop this nightmare. The only thing that stopped my episodes, the only thing that stopped me from living in a constant state of fear, a constant state of hell on earth, the only thing that saved me was my own breath. Breathwork, meditation is the only thing that worked. And yeah, this whole experience obviously is kind of what was my catalyst into being into holistic medicine. It was obviously just going through so much trials and tribulations with the medical industry to the point where it was the last option, and it happened to be the only thing that worked. And meditation saved my life. It truly did. It was the only thing that saved me. And what it did is it fixed the problem at the core, at the root, at the foundation. You see, medicine for mental illness, in my personal opinion, is like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. Okay, it numbs you and it's superficial and it's not a viable long-term solution to fix these problems. Because the problem stems within your brain, and the only person that can truly fix that is you. And that's what I learned in this experience. I healed myself through my own breath. I started meditating, and then I started to heal my trauma with things like shamanic breathing and using, specific breathing exercises to essentially heal and rewire my entire brain. And in this process, I've discovered so much about myself and about reality in general. This is also during the period in which I started, developing a lot of my psychic skills as well. When I first came back, it started with claircognizance. I knew definitions of words and things that I just never knew before. And then it was clairaudience, and from there it was clairvoyance. They started kind of developing over more time, but I did notice that when I came back. This experience was very terrifying for me. But looking back, it was very much so like a forced spiritual awakening, very young. When you undertake such extreme amounts of traumatic experience, there really is two roads in which you can walk on. You can either walk down the path of being the victim, or you can walk down the path of being the warrior. You see, being the victim is a lot easier. It is the pathway that a lot of people choose to take because it's comfortable. It's easier to blame people, places, and things than to look in the mirror and look within. The pathway of the warrior is not an easy pathway to walk down. It is the more difficult path, but in the end, you can reap the biggest rewards from it. Take this experience, for example. I could, for years, just been like, oh, I'm a victim to this, and stayed in that kind of energy. But I also wouldn't be here today, right? The reason I'm alive and I'm still walking on this earth is because I'm a fucking warrior. I personally wear my traumas and like the things I've been through as like a badge on my satchel. Okay, like picture a little Girl Guide scout, like little invisible satchel across your chest. And I have all these little patches of these things I've been through. And whenever I go through things, I just like imagine it sewing on a little badge on my satchel. Okay, fuck being the victim. I could have gone through the shit and like played the victim role. Oh, look what happened to me. No, fuck that bullshit. I'm not a victim. I'm the warrior. And that's why I'm still alive here today to tell the story. I chose to keep fighting even when I wanted to fucking give up. The fact that I'm even alive another day on this earth is truly and utterly a miracle. You know, I think another thing of this experience has done is really transformed my perspective on everything. Gratitude is so important, and we are not guaranteed tomorrow. None of us are. My message to all the people out there that have struggled with mental health issues or addictions of any kind, just know that it's a fucking blessing. It is a blessing that you are alive here today, because not everybody made it. And not everybody will. You know, a lot of people get sucked into the big pharma trap and their life gets destroyed because of it. You see, the system was never built to serve you. It was built to serve the elites of the world. Here, take this medicine. It's gonna fix you. Here, take this. You know what that is? Fixing mental health issues with medicine is like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. You can only numb yourself out so much. Okay? To fix these issues, you need to look at the root. And the foundation of that stems within your brain. Well, you see, our brains are supercomputers that we can actually program ourselves. And we've been conditioned and brought up in a world that has programmed you into believing you don't hold that power, so therefore you don't. Why is that? You see, the law of attraction states that positive or negative thoughts attract positive or negative experiences. If you have been conditioned to live into a state of fear and you believe that, your entire reality will follow as such, because reality is entirely subjective for whatever you believe to be true. You see, the most powerful force of nature on this earth is the power of your own belief system. You see, the elites of this world know the truth. And unfortunately, they've brainwashed and conditioned the majority of Western society into subscribing to their ideologies and thought patterns because this benefits their agenda, you see. But guess what? We are currently living at one of the most important moments of time-space reality. We are currently living in a mass awakening. More people around the world are waking up than ever before, and this is a very, very beautiful time to be alive. We're living at one of the most transformative moments of history. This is truly the make it or break it time period for this earth. You see, fifth dimensional consciousness is currently available to us on the 3D. My fellow starseeds, lightworkers, empaths, and healers across the world will guide everybody during this shift. You see, the energy works a lot different on the fifth dimension. An entire lifetime on Earth is merely just a blimp of time in the fifth dimension. In the fifth dimensions, energy like love, light, peace, oneness, all these high vibrational frequencies exist. But you see, on Earth, it's the third dimension. It's a lower frequency. Planet Earth, the third dimension, is all about duality. The light does not exist without the dark. The yin doesn't exist without the yang. Prior to this lifetime, we actually all chose to come to Earth, to experience both light and dark aspects of this world, to evolve our soul, right? Because Earth is simply just school for our soul. You see, sometimes in life, the universe will throw tests at you, and difficult situations happen. But it was never about what happened to you that determines who you are. It's about how you react to what happens to you. When the universe kicks you down, when life gets you and beats you down, are you going to stay on the ground in the mud, all dirty? Or are you going to get yourself back up and be a warrior and try again? We all go through trials and tribulations in life. You know, there's been a point in my life where I've had everybody I love turn on me. You know, everyone was throwing stones at me. Everybody I loved was throwing stones at me. But you want to know what I did? I picked up those stones and I built a motherfucking castle. And that's what you got to do when life gets you down, bro. You just got to build your castle. You see, big pharma, the medical industry actually benefits quite a good chunk on your mental health. And that is something I learned throughout this experience, is just how loose and faulty the screws of the medical industry truly are. Just remember, folks, medicine is a business. And what's a business's main objective? To make money. You see, your health is actually not their number one priority. Making money is. The elites have used the medical system to control and manipulate so many people, and I was actually one of them. You know, taking all these medications thinking it was actually going to make me better. It only made me worse. It fucked me up 10 times more than I was prior to. And it does that for a lot of people. Most cases of addictions, you know, that starts in the medical industry and when they're prescribed a certain drug, too much of it, and then they can never get off of it, right? The elites, the people that run this world know the truth. And they've been keeping that from you for a very, very long time. You are a lot more powerful than you think you are. Our brains are supercomputers that we can program to believe anything. And why is the power of belief so important? Well, you see, this is the most powerful energy source in this entire world, your own belief system. Why is that? You see, reality is entirely subjective for whatever you believe to be true. When I started rewiring my mind and brain with meditation, breath work, stillness, and being in the present moment, I didn't only heal myself, but I also unlocked myself. Just like every single one of you guys can unlock yourself. And what do I mean by this? You see, we don't have millions. We actually all have trillions of ancient ancestral DNA cells within our body that we can activate. And throughout my meditation process, I activated many different healing qualities within myself that is actually readily available to each and every one of you guys. You can heal yourself too. It's just not the easiest pathway, right? It's easier to walk the path of the victim, like we said before. The warrior is strong. The warrior doesn't become strong overnight. Look at muscles. You don't go to the gym once and grow big and strong. You have to break and tear apart your muscles and rip and shred them before they grow back even stronger. Your brain sometimes is the same way. So just know, if you are going through a difficult time mentally in life, if you are going through some hard times, just know that you can alchemize this energy and transmute your pain into power. And you can do that with the beautiful healing art of your own breath. Again, there's also so much more to this story. There's so much to this story, but if I were to tell you guys every single detail, we'd literally be here for 10 hours. And my camera's about to die. So we're going to finish off the episode. That was a heavy hitter. It was definitely the craziest experience of my life, but it was also the biggest learning lesson. You know, prior to this lifetime, we've all actually chose to incarnate on this earth to experience both light and dark attributes. That's the most exciting part about being a human on earth, is experiencing feelings. And sometimes those can go dark. You know, they say that religion is for people who fear hell, and spirituality is for people who've already been there. And this was definitely the main propelling force for my spiritual journey. And obviously getting nowhere with medicine in the traditional medical industry obviously got me into holistic care. I've learned so much throughout my crazy life experiences. And this really is just the beginning. I can't wait to share it with you guys, all the things I've learned over the years. But I feel like that was a lot for just one episode. So thank you guys so much for listening. This took a lot of courage to open up about this story, just because I've literally held this inside and haven't told. Some of the closest members of my family don't even know this story. So the fact that now you know this, it's kind of cool. Happy hippie family. Look at us. Freaking trauma bonding together. Yeah. No, I just felt like this was a story that I've been sitting on for a very long time, and I felt like I needed to share it. So thank you for listening. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys next Wednesday. Peace.